Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 4 of the Magical Hebrew Workshop series. Hopefully you're seeing and appreciating a significant improvement in quality over the previous videos. Today we'll be looking at the Abracadabra Amulet, and we'll talk a little bit about the history and the usage of it, and then we'll go right into how to construct the amulet, and I'll be demonstrating it for you guys live, and you can follow along at home. When we get into the construction, I definitely encourage you to take your time with it. Pause the video, use YouTube's option to change the playback speed, and just follow along at the pace that's right for you. You can practice as many times as you need to with this amulet. There's no specific timing or day of the week that it's supposed to be made, so might as well take your time and get it right. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone who's donated to the series and enabled me to update the production quality significantly. I would love to keep doing this and keep producing these videos for all of you. So don't forget to hit the like button, the subscribe button down below, and donate down in the comments. With that said, let's get started and look at the Abracadabra Amulet. Abracadabra is a word that I think most of us who have been at all interested in magic in one way or another have encountered, whether it's seeing a magician do a trick at a performance or it's hearing the word Abracadabra in Harry Potter. I think everyone's fairly familiar with the word abracadabra. Very few of us, though, have the privilege of knowing where it comes from. And that's what we're going to go ahead and look at in the next little bit here. So, abracadabra is first recorded in the writings of Cernunnos Simonicus in his Liber Medicinalis as a remedy for malaria. He recommended that abracadabra be written as an amulet in a descending triangle where the letters are reduced by removing one each line, and that this amulet be worn around the patient's neck. We can see in the lower left here a 13th century version of the amulet from Simonicus's actual text. That was around 40 CE, and within 200 years, we have evidence of Gnostics of the sect of Basilides using abracadabra for invoking the aid of beneficent spirits, also to ward off disease, and especially to ward off misfortune and bring good fortune. We have this continue, and within another 300 years, we can prove it was widely distributed. In the upper right, we'll see a Coptic codex where the same amulet is provided, and we can see it on the right page to the left of this framed square here, that reducing upside-down triangle amulet. That amulet is provided as a widespread cure for malaria and a number of other diseases. And it didn't go away. More than 1,000 years later, we have evidence that Londoners were writing the Abracadabra amulet on their front doors to ward off the Great Plague of London. And it wasn't until about 150 years after that, in the 1800s, that the word came into use by stage magicians, who used it to attract the attention of their audiences and highlight parts of their stage act. Now, when we get into 20th century magic, as far as the study of serious occultism, we come across the word abracadabra. And as we know, Aleister Crowley had a fondness for changing the spellings of things, including the word magic itself. In Crowley's Book of the Law, chapter 3, he begins it with abracadabra, the reward of Ra-Hoor-Kut. In his book on Gematria, 777, and other kabbalistic writings, Crowley gives this very complex diagram of what he calls the kabbalistic Gematria of abracadabra. He claims to have kabbalistically derived that the correct character for the middle of the word is a H or a He, not a Kaf, as is traditionally given. I have some thoughts on this, and it could be related to the removal of the value of 15 from Kaf, leaving with He. The significance of 15 is the name Yah, one of the names of God. I can't really think of anything else that would lead us to the same value. So it may be that Crowley was removing God from abracadabra and left with abracadabra. In any case, He was really fond of the word and took it rather seriously, as we can see from the intensity of his diagrams. As far as the actual probable origins of abracadabra as a descending amulet, it probably didn't begin with English letters. There's some evidence that it began with the Hebrew alphabet. And many people have suggested it takes the construction Aleph, Bet, Resh, Aleph, Kaf, Dalet, Bet, Resh, Aleph. It was suggested by scholars in the 18th and 19th century that this was an Aramaic phrase that meant, I create as I speak. Unfortunately, it's not Aramaic. This root, DBR, in cadavra, is not used for the word to speak in Aramaic. That said, it is certainly used in Hebrew. And it roughly means, I will create as I speak. Now that makes a lot of sense as a use in a magical setting. When we look at the Hebrew, we can see that maybe it wasn't spelled quite the way I have it in the amulet here. It's possible it was transcribed into the Roman alphabet from just hearing it. And so it's possible that it could be one of these three phrases or other ones. But these are some interesting ones I've pondered. We have, of course, abracadabra, avracadabra, I will create as I speak. We also have avracadabra, it will come to pass the way I speak it. And of course, I would be remiss not to mention avracadabra, I will bless, I will speak. So there are three ways that we see the amulet constructed. And if we go back to the one that was given in that 13th century manual, we saw that the first letter, that leading letter from left to right, was being reduced each time. That is, taken off each time the amulet is rewritten. That's one of three options, because we can also take the letter from the end, which is another common way of rendering it, or from the beginning and the end. The resulting reductions look these ways, and the beginning and the end form giving kind of the most equilateral triangle. One thing to note is that we can read in the reduce from the end version the word abracadabra up the left side. In the reduce from both sides version, we can read it down, abracadabra. And in the reduce from the beginning version, we actually follow it down this side, abracadabra. So in all ways, we have sort of a magic square effect where we see the word repeated in multiple dimensions. I wanted to take a look at the significance of these three ways, so I decided to look at the gematria of the reductions. And beginning with the reduce from end method, we can see some interesting associations. 431 is the value of the word abracadabra itself, which equals Oseh Ladonai, made to God or made for God. I think it's a really interesting intention to put in when you're creating an amulet. When we pull that aleph off the end, we reduce the value by 1 to 430, which gives us the meaning of nefesh, soul. Dropping the resh, we have 230, and we have malach malachim, the king of kings. Dropping the bet, we have 228, and we come to keruv, a cherub, a type of angel. Removing the dalet, we have 224, which brings us to tirah, encampment. Removing the kaf, we have ereg, to weave. And removing the aleph, we have bara, to form or create. Removing that next resh brings us to 3 and gives us the word bow, or come. And removing that bet, obviously, we only have aleph. So this gives us an interesting narrative as we move down the amulet. Made to God, the soul, the king of kings, the cherub encampment, weave and form, come, one. We can sort of see how this is very appropriate to the construction of an amulet for certain magical intentions. I should point out that that word tirah, encampment, appears in classical Jewish magic particularly in the writings of the Baal Shem of London, who performed a relatively unique type of Hebraic angel magic, which required them to build certain encampments for the angels in the ritual space. The cherubs being a rank of angel that's well established. If we look at the gematria of the reducing from both ends version of the amulet, we have less to look at because there are fewer lines because we're taking away 2 letters each time, not just 1. And it really cuts to the chase. We have the same value for the whole amulet, Abracadabra, Osel Adonai, made to God. When we reduce the 2 olives, we deduct 2, and we come with 429, which equals mishpat, or which means judgment or law. When we reduce to the next line, we get 227, equaling bracha, or blessing. Reducing again, we have 25, equaling ko, or thus. And after we reduce one more time, we have only kaf, equal to 20, which signifies haya, the verb form of to be, and also at the root of the divine names Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh, and some say at the root of the Tetragrammaton. So we have an interesting statement here as well, reading from the top to bottom. Made to God, or made for God, judgment, blessing, thus to be. We can see a powerful and concise amulet formed here, and packing much of a similar punch, but maybe cutting out some middlemen in the operation and creation of this one. Finally, if we look at the third possible method of straight gematria on this and just reducing from the end, we have, of course, the same starting place, Osel Adonai, made to God. As we pull the aleph off the beginning, the value becomes 430 once again, and we have nefesh, soul. After that, though, pulling off the bet gives us 428, which gives us chashmalim. Chashmalim are the shining ones. They're a type of angel that's mentioned in the books of the prophets, and they are recognized as being of the nature of fire and sound. After this, once again, we have 228, Keruv, cherub. Next, we have 227, Zachar, which does mean male, but it also means the masculine principle in general. So it means to insert, to posit, to create from a masculine stance. After this, we have 207, Ein Sof, endless. We also have the equivalent of the word or, light. These are the 2 kabbalistic principles at sort of near the highest level. Next, we have 203, equivalent to bara, create. Removing the bet, we come to 201, the word ra, which is an ancient root meaning to see, and of course then we only have the aleph meaning 1. So once again, we have an interesting narrative on this amulet, once again seemingly invoking angelic levels of assistance and directing it and channeling it into a single point as the point of the amulet. We have made to God, soul, chashmalim, cherub, masculine creation, endless create, see, one or oneness. So all these amulets seem to me, when we look at the gematria, to very much, as they reduce geometrically, kind of focus and channel certain intentions and certain energies to the point of the amulet. And to me, that is the point of these amulets. Yes, they can still be used to ward off plague, and you might as well make one and hang it on your front door until the pandemic's over. But the magical use of this tool is as this vehicle to ride into your magical focus, and it can be constructed upside down to ride back out. Okay, so before we get started constructing the amulets, we have a little calculation to do if we want to try to make these really visually impressive. First, we want to count the letters in Abracadabra. I've written it out here, and we'll go from right to left as we do in Hebrew. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, mind you, I'm not doing any gematria calculations or translating their values. I'm just counting them so I know how much space they take up. So we know we have 9 letters on the top line. Now, depending on which form of reduction we choose, we will take away a different number of letters each time. Let's start with the double number reduction. That time, we'll take away a character from the front and the back each time we do a line. So we'll go from 9 to 7 to 5 to 3 to 1. So if we count the number of lines we have here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 lines. So we know that we need to make an amulet that is at least 9 lines wide and 5 lines high, because Hebrew letters are roughly square. The next thing we need to do is measure the tip of our pen. This is significant if you use different styles of calligraphy pens. So we're going to look at the tip here, the chisel tip. And really the easiest way to do this is to just carefully make lines. And the way I do this is I'll lay the pen so that the tip is square and just blot it on. And that's one tip. For ensuring that we have enough space to write the Hebrew letters and have white space, I like to do about 3 tips height. You could do 3.5. So I'll go ahead and make another tip, starting at the end of that one, and another tip. So that's about 3 tips height on the marker. I will now go ahead and take my ruler and measure it. And I can see that it's a little more than half an inch there. I'm not going to stress myself on getting an exact measurement. I'm actually just going to take my fine tip Sharpie and just mark out the height of that on my ruler. I can go ahead and take that off with alcohol later. But now I've got the exact spacing of one character in terms of height, and since they're square, it's going to be one character in terms of width as well. So I know I need 5 lines. Let me go ahead and mark that out, and I'll do that in pencil. The cool thing about using pencil is I can draw all the references I want to make things look really perfect, and then erase it. And this isn't just some modern technology. When we look at most ancient manuscripts, given the amount of cost and labor that went into producing them, they were sketching first. And we can see it actually when we look at them in various types of x-rays and scans, and even when you look at them with the naked eye sometimes. Okay, so what we want to do is measure out enough room for our amulet up here, and we've marked out our ruler. It's not really showing up on the camera, but you guys are going to have to take my word that there's a couple of black marks on our ruler right here. I also know from testing this out previously that my page is 9 inches across. So if I'm going to do an amulet that's the whole width of my page here, I'm going to have about 1 inch a character. That said, my characters look like they're only a little more than half an inch, so I shouldn't need the whole page. I'll have way too much white space to work with, and it'll look a little silly. So I only need about half the page. That means I can come in about 1/4 of the page and just start marking out where the 2 lines are. I don't even need to measure because I've marked my ruler, and as long as I keep it relatively straight, it'll give me a frame to put my letters in. And I'm just making these little marks because I'm going to deposit my letters or place my letters in between them. Now we wrote down that we have 9 letters, and of course we need to make it 5 high for this amulet. So we have room for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 already. That's 7. There's 8, and one more dot will give us 9. Now it's also occurred to me that these are definitely crooked, but that's okay. We're using pencil. I just need to know where the spacing is. I can put my ruler here and pull a line across. That's fine. I'm trying to keep my pencil marks light so they're really easy to erase. Okay, so I have enough room for the first line of my amulet really easily. I've also marked my ruler, and I know my letters are roughly square, so I can mark where my next line goes, and my next line, and my next line, and my next line pretty quickly and easily. So that'll give us 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of the amulet. That's exactly what we need. And since we measured the space from the actually straight line, we can just keep pulling straight lines across the page and give ourselves some lines to work with. If they're not perfectly straight, again, that's fine. You can correct it with the actual writing. That's what's going to stay on the page. You can draw as many pencil lines as you want. I definitely recommend you keep them light so they're very easy to erase. And you might want to invest in like a handheld eraser rather than just using the eraser on your pencil. It just is easier sometimes. Go ahead and redraw some of these lines if I need to. Okay, that looks pretty good. I can tell that I definitely have some crooked lines in here. I'll go ahead and try to touch those up, but again, I'm going to actually be writing the letters, and that's what's going to stay on the page, so they don't have to be perfect. That said, it's not so good to confuse yourself. Okay, we have that going. Now, we're going to want to bring in our reductions. So for this style amulet, it's pretty easy. We're just pulling off of the two ends, so we can actually just draw a grid down from our marks on the top. Since we're reducing by 2 each time, it's a symmetrical reduction. When we do the next amulet, where we only reduce by 1, we actually have to recalculate how many marks we need and how far apart they are every time. But for this one, it's really quick and easy. And once we form the grid, then we can go ahead and fill in our letters. I recommend, as you're learning Hebrew and learning to make these amulets, that you work with pencil and then ink over the pencil. It'll help you hold your space, your proportion, help you remember your forms, and it'll give you an extra chance to practice each letter in every process. You might do it a few times in pencil, once on a piece of paper, once on your consecrated paper or parchment or whatever you're going to use, and one more time in ink. Cool. So I have roughly the grid of my amulet here. I know that my top line here has enough space for all my letters, and I'll start putting my letters in pencil. And I have the amulet written on the bottom here, and just for reference, of course, you can copy it off the top line. Now, as I'm penciling these, I'm really not trying to do these with much intention or perfect their forms or anything. I'm really just trying to measure the space and make sure everything looks good. Aleph, Bet, Resh, Aleph, Kaf, Dalet, Bet, Resh, Aleph. Okay, that looks good. I can see how it fits in there. There's good spacing. The letters look good. So now this amulet's really easy. There's not a lot of thinking. You just don't do the first and the last letters on the next line. So we go Bet, Resh, Aleph, Kaf, Dalet, Bet, Resh. Okay, so I'll go ahead and fill this out for you guys a little sped up, and then we'll come back for the inking. So that's it. That's a penciled Abracadabra amulet. One thing that you might find helpful, I know that sometimes I get sucked into the amulet and I'm not paying attention. You might find it helpful to drop a line through the squares in pencil. I wouldn't do it in marker, of course, but just in pencil so that you remember that you're moving over every time. So now that that's penciled, I can go ahead and ink it. And I'll go ahead and do that a little sped up. And then we'll erase and see what we've got. Okay, so that's an inked amulet. Let's go ahead and erase these pencil lines and see how it looks. Okay, not bad. For the first time using my marker, I'm definitely not used to using these tips, but I'll get used to them, and I'm pretty pleased with how that came out. I went ahead and lined them all out, and it turns out I did not eyeball them well at all. And we have 8 inches instead of the 7.2 inches we were shooting for. That's fine. We can adjust. We just need to do it. So I went ahead and erased the mark on my ruler. I'm going to measure the actual mark I used, and I'm going to use this to derive our height, and then I'll show you how we get our subsequent row's width after we've got the height. And I just want to go ahead and I'll actually just mark down where the dots are. It doesn't even, I don't need the exact measurements, but I know it's a 9x9 grid, and I know I'm going to need as many vertically as I need horizontally. So I can just mark this on my ruler and wipe it off after. There we go, 9x9 grid. And there we go. So now I'll switch to my pencil because I'm going to write on the page. And I want it to be easily erasable. So I'll just make these little hash marks wherever I have a mark on my ruler. And this will save a lot of time trying to get it perfect. Boom, that's the quickest and easiest you're ever going to see that. Now, I'm going to rule out my lines here. And again, I'm going to try to do the pencil pretty lightly so I can easily erase it. And once my lines are ruled out, I know my first row, but I'm going to have to measure and calculate my subsequent rows because this one doesn't collapse symmetrically from both ends, so we can't use our standard grid. We actually have to rearrange things and make a bit of a pattern. What do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we want a line here, I guess. Let me go ahead and measure it out. Right here. Pull that across. And we have our 9 lines of our amulet. Lovely. Nice and spacious. We'll be able to really get in there with the marker. Okay, so now we have a tricky thing to do. On this top line, we can go ahead and just pull down our marks, but on subsequent lines, we cannot. And we have to recalculate for each line on this one. So we'll start over here and start pulling down our marks. And you'll kind of see how the grid just shifts on each line for this style when we reduce by 1 letter each line. And you can see once we form the grid, that squareness, evenness to everything stands out a lot more. You know, the crooked line of dots that we begin with is just a guide, and as we get more and more precise as we work. Okay, cool. So we have the top line gridded out. Okay, now we want to measure our work so far and use that to extrapolate the next lines. So let's make sure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares. We know that each square is about 2¼ centimeters, and the total thing is about 20¼ centimeters. We can pull out the trusty old calculator and confirm that 20¼ centimeters divided by 2¼ centimeters is 9. Cool. So that worked out great. Now the next thing we have to calculate is how wide the subsequent lines are. And that's pretty easy because we know it starts at 20¼ centimeters and reduces by 2¼ each line. So I'm going to mark these in Sharpie up here so it's easy for us to see. And I'll do the math on my calculator right here. So the second line is 18, and the next line is 15.75. 25. 13.5. Minus 2.25 brings us to 11.25. Minus 2.25. 9. 6.75. 4.5. Start back over here. And that leaves us with space for one letter. So we did our math right. It all breaks down perfectly. So now we just need to measure that off of this diagram that we have here. Now, this is a little tricky because it's bending inwards. So we actually have to symmetrically take from both sides. And so what we want to do for that is to figure out half of the size of each one and pull it off the middle. It's a little tricky, but first let's start the middle and it'll all make sense. So we know it's 20.25 is the whole grid, which means that 10.1 something is the middle. There's our middle line. I'm going to pull that middle line down all the way to the bottom line of the triangle. Cool, the middle is drawn. So with that middle line, we can calculate off the middle line half of these numbers, right? So meaning I will take 9 centimeters for my first line, which is 18. Half of 18 is 9. And I know that 18 starts here. The character size is the same, but 18 starts there, okay? Line 2, that is. Now 15.75 is my next line. 15.75 over 2 is about, what is that, 7.5, 7.8, 7.9? So about 8, a little less than 8. So I'll go down the next line, place a little less than 8 on my center line, and mark the end. Okay, next we have 13.5, so that's 6 3/4. So I'll put 6 3/4 at the middle, and I'll mark it over here. Next is 11.25, so that's about 5.6, so a little more than 5.5. Next is 9, so half of that's 4.5. Go ahead and place that. After that is 6 3/4, so half of that is 3.35-ish, 3 1/3-ish. There. And then 4.5. So that's 2 1/4. And of course, the final letter is going to go in the middle. That's really easy. Cool. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines. And we've got our triangle beginning on our left. So this is actually really easy from here because we have our letter widths already marked out. So we can just place these guys. And we're going to go from 9 letters to 8. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Beautiful. Now we'll go to the next line. And for this one, we need to mark out 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The next line. For this one, we mark out 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The next line, we're marking out 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. 1, 2, 3, 2. And then, of course, the final letter will go down in the middle. Cool, we have all our letters really neatly marked out. You may notice that there's really only two patterns for these. There's the even numbered ones, which all line up, and the odd numbered ones, which all line up with each other. So you can make a grid. I find it much easier and leaves me less to erase and is easier for me to work with. If I just do these dots, it really frames it out well for me. I can make sure I have a triangle. I know it's going to be symmetrical. We're good to go. I'm also going to scratch this out because I am finding myself very tempted to write in here, and I know that's not where a character goes. So I'll scratch that out. I know not to write in there. Let me go ahead and pencil in my letters, and then we'll ink it, and then we'll erase it. I'll speed this up. Okay, here we have it all penciled in. It looks really good. It's nice and clean. Obviously, I didn't focus too well on the formation of these letters, but I want to use this as a point to emphasize to you that when you do go to create the amulet, not at this stage, but at the stage from here, when you go to put ink on paper, put your intention into those letters as we learned in the previous lessons. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do that. I will speed this up so you guys don't have to ride with me for the whole time, but I'm going to put my intention into these letters. What I'm doing to put my intention into these letters is I'm remembering as I form them the significance of the forms that we discussed, the name of the letter, the sound of the letter, and I'm going to pronounce the letter as I complete its form. Finally, as I complete each line, I'm going to be saying it. So it will be abracadabra, abracadabra, abracadab, abracad, abrac, abra, avr, av. Okay, so with that said, I'll go into fast time while I ink this amulet. Okay, after inking it looks pretty good. I want to erase it and see how clean it looks after that. So let's go ahead and do another speed up while I get busy erasing over here. Okay, there we have it. Looking pretty clean. Obviously can use a little more cleanup over here. And that's why I definitely encourage you to make your pencil marks light. But it has the hallmarks of the Abracadabra Amulet, the descending diagonal lines of the characters, abracadabra across the top, abracadabra up the side, the line of olives going down the right. I got a little funky with this diagonal line of the olive. I started having a little too much fun with it, so it makes this edge sort of imperfect. But presuming you don't get all graffiti with forming your letters, it'll come out really nice and clean. Most of the marks you're still seeing on the page are little eraser scrappies, and normally when I'm doing this, I've got a can of compressed air to spray those off with. But that's how I do it. That's how I would form the Abracadabra Amulet, and hopefully that was helpful for you guys to be able to do it yourselves. That's it, guys. That's how we make the Abracadabra Amulet. It's pretty easy. Just be careful with your measurements, be careful with your calculations, and it's really simple to do. And if you don't get funky with your olives like I did there, it'll turn out really clean. So if you enjoyed this lesson, I encourage you, go ahead, click like, subscribe, and go down into the description and click that link and make a small donation in exchange for the value that you've received today. If you haven't checked out the other lessons, take this opportunity to look through the other lessons in this course. It is a full course on Magical Hebrew. The next lesson will take us into the Greater Key of Solomon, where we will start working on some of the Hebrew-based sigils that appear in that book.